So where do we go from here? Hopefully this course has been enlightening to you, educational, giving you new ideas and concepts, perhaps helping you reframe uh, your ideas about pain, and hopefully it's the start of a new direction in your journey to slay your pain. And no doubt it's been a long journey for some and may continue to be a long journey. But the idea is to keep learning, to keep understanding why you feel pain and what you can do about it. We can review those 5 points from the beginning of our course. Remembering that pain that is understood is not to be feared. And one of the important concepts that I've found, even with my own pain experience, my own pain journey, is that how we respond to pain strongly drives the pain response. What do I mean by that? Not that we should ever come to love pain or that we ever really want pain, but understanding that it's our body, our system's way of trying to help us, our nervous system trying to protect us, even if it's being overprotective, even if it's drawing the wrong conclusion. We want to have a more friendly relationship with our body, with our nervous system. Because when you've had a lot of pain for a long time, you can have a very confrontational relationship with your body, your pain, your brain. But understanding that it's just doing what it thinks it needs to do, appreciating it for what it's trying to do, but then helping guide it into a new direction, into a better response, having this more appreciative outlook of what our body is trying to do can be one of the steps in trying to recalibrate our nervous system. And not fearing pain, really understanding it. So confronting our pain with knowledge. We want to feed on accurate information that lowers the threat value of our pain experience or our experience in general. So sometimes it means questioning what we've believed, and perhaps some of the information in this course has really made you question your beliefs on why you feel what you feel. Remembering that hurt does not necessarily equal harm. If we are hurting but not harming, it's because our system is sensitized in an effort to protect us. And with time, practice, our system can be recalibrated to be less sensitive. Remembering motion is lotion, that our body thrives with movement. So many of our tissues in our body are just designed to be nourished with movement. One fascinating fact about cartilage, which is that structure at the end of our bones that's generally super slippery and that provides a little cushioning in our joints. That cartilage doesn't have a blood supply. And the way it gets its nutrition is by the pressure exerted on the cartilage. It's like a hard sponge. And the pressure that our body puts on the cartilage squeezes out juices and then it sucks it back in like a sponge. And that's how the cartilage gets nourishment. The lubrication in our joints, what's called synovial fluid, is released into the joint as we move the joint, which is why if you do have osteoarthritis, you may feel stiff and achy at first when you first start moving, but in about 10-15 minutes you feel a little better. It's because you literally cause lubrication. So motion is lotion. And hopefully you'll feel more confident moving despite the pain. If you've been cleared to move by your healthcare providers, if you've been told you're not harming tissue, well then, despite the pain, perhaps you will little by little gradually expose yourself to more activity. The idea, focus on functional activities, attainable goals, and dream big. Don't let the pain win. And we got to pace ourselves. So starting easy, building slow. Truth be told, the longer you've been in pain, the longer the journey will be. But there is hope. So where do we go from here? This pain neuroscience education that you've taken in this course is a great foundation to build upon. But there's more to learn and there's more to do. In an upcoming course, we're going to build on this foundation of pain neuroscience to see how our thought patterns, our emotions, even our attachment histories, the way we connected with adult figures in our childhood, how overwhelming events or traumas, how all these things can wire our nervous system either to feel safe or to feel less safe. And when it feels less safe, it makes pain. But just to give you an idea of what that would entail, what some of this knowledge would entail, there's a concept called psychological flexibility. And psychological flexibility is sort of at the root of an approach that's called acceptance and commitment therapy. Now, it starts in the psychological world, but it has an effect on just lifestyle behaviors and chronic pain even. And so with psychological flexibility, we build resilience. So maybe it's easier to define what psychological inflexibility is. Well, psychological inflexibility is when we become our thoughts and feelings. We literally fuse with our thoughts. We don't have the thought that I have pain. I am pain. Psychological inflexibility leads to avoidance, leads to a rigid attention to the past and the future. That inflexibility leads to inaction, sometimes even impulsivity. And so building that flexibility helps us to change our relationship to thoughts, memories, feelings, even body sensations. So with this approach, instead of trying to control the content of our thoughts and emotions, we're just trying to change our relationship to them. And one of the techniques in this approach is the idea of cognitive diffusion, where we look at thoughts or feelings, emotions, with an attitude of dispassionate curiosity, simply noticing without judging. So if we ever feel, I'll never feel better again, we have that thought. If we keep repeating, I'll never feel better again, I'll never feel better again, it just becomes more and more the truth. But instead of repeating that thought, we want to say, I'm having the thought that I'll never feel better again. Let's say this instead. I'm noticing that I'm having the thought that I'll never feel better again. Or I'm noticing that I'm thinking about having the thought that I'll never feel better again. It's a little exercise, but what are we doing? We're putting distance between that thought and who we are. A thought is just a thought, and our brain will create about 80,000 thoughts a day. How researchers have counted that, I have no idea. But we can be hooked on thoughts, on one thought. One thought can drive us mad sometimes, can just drive our whole life course if we get hooked on it. And so by defusing from these thoughts and really putting them in their proper place as just one thought of 80,000 today, we take some of the power away from that thought. Another principle in acceptance and commitment therapy is the focus on present moment awareness. So we mentioned in psychological inflexibility, there's a rigid attention to the past and the future. What does that mean? That there's very little time spent in the present. So present moment awareness, being highly aware of one's internal experiences, external experiences, with a non-judgmental stance, simply observing, noticing. If you have pain, not evaluating it, not drawing a conclusion, just noticing it. Notice your pain without evaluating or trying to get rid of it. In time, that'll lower the threat value of the pain. And a more and more common phrase we're hearing in general when it comes to wellness and healthcare is trauma-informed care. And we can have a course just on trauma-informed care. But just to get a glimpse of what we can build upon with this Pain Neuroscience Education Foundation, So often, the old way of treating people or thinking about people, particularly in pain, what's wrong with you? What's wrong? You go to the doctor, what's wrong? What's wrong? Particularly with chronic pain, it's hard to say. What's wrong? What's wrong? Well, let's move from finding out what's wrong with somebody. Let's take a step forward. What happened? Why are we in pain? Why might we be in pain? But go even further still, not just what happened, but what's right. We might be in chronic pain, but there's a lot that's right about us. And focusing on what is working, building that strength, that confidence in what we do have, as opposed to focusing on what we don't have. And some of the masters in trauma care have had so much good to teach. And these are just three of my favorite people. Janina Fisher, a great clinician, um, helps to explain what trauma is. It's the unique individual experience of events in which the ability to integrate emotional experience is overwhelmed, or the experience is subjectively a threat to life and body and sanity. What's the point? Two people might experience the same event, and yet they respond to it in two different ways. One might be what we call traumatized by it, overwhelmed by it. Another might not be. And so understanding each individual has their own response to an event. But if it becomes trauma, it can alter one's life for good if it's not addressed. Gabor Mate makes a good point. He says trauma is not only what happened to you, that overwhelming event, but it's what is happening inside of you. And speaking to those who have been dealing with trauma, they know that there's a visceral, somatic, a body feeling. It's really the activation of the sympathetic nervous system to an extent that it feels like there's no control. The trigger warning. When somebody's triggered, it's an activation of the sympathetic nervous system. Bessel van der Kolk, one of the leaders in trauma care, what he helps us understand that the threat perception system has changed, and people's physical reactions are dictated by the imprints of the past. So we mentioned about how past experiences can affect our current pain state, or our nervous system's perception of threat, calculation of threat. And maybe we know we've been traumatized. Maybe we know what we've been through, but we don't want to talk about it. And what's very important to know, the best practice in trauma care now is not talking about your trauma. It's, as Bessel van der Kolk says, it's not important for the therapist to know the details of the patient's trauma. It's critical for the patient themselves to learn to tolerate feeling what they feel and knowing what they know. And it's only after learning to bear what's going on inside can we start to befriend rather than obliterate the emotions that keep our maps of the world fixed and immovable. And as long as the mind is defending itself against invisible assaults, our closest bonds are threatened, along with our ability to play, learn, plan, imagine, pay attention to others' needs. And what he says when it comes to trauma, the body needs to learn that the danger has passed and to live in the reality of the present. So these are quotes or expressions from people in the trauma world, but do you see how it relates to the pain neuroscience world? And why? Because it's in essence our nervous system trying to protect us. Sometimes it draws the wrong conclusion. The take-home message: we need to feel safe before we can effectively work to reduce our pain, and that pain could be physical, that pain could be emotional. So finally, how about a recap here? Let's answer those questions quickly from the beginning. Why you hurt. So is all pain bad? I think you'll be able to confidently say no. All pain is not bad. It's uncontrolled pain that's bad. Should you fear pain? Absolutely not. We might feel less secure. We might feel uncertain, But the more we know, the more information we feed our nervous system, the more confident we can be, the less perception of threat, and potentially less pain. What are those three drivers or types of neuromusculoskeletal pain? Well, it's the tissue, that nociceptive driver, the nerve, the neuropathic driver, and the system-wide, the chronic pain, the central sensitization, or that nociplastic. So what can you do? What is pain neuroscience education? Well, this whole course has been that. Understanding how your body processes pain to lower the threat. When we understand it, it lowers the threat. So what are strategies to manage those three drivers of pain? We need to feel safe and empowered through up-to-date knowledge. Let's not base our conclusions on knowledge that has now been proven wrong. Going from just a pure biomedical approach to including the psychological, the social, our history, a trauma-informed approach. We want to promote healing. If it's a fresh injury, let the tissues heal, let the body guide the return to movement. We want to control pain from the start, and we want to have the right mindset. Not be threatened by the pain, the injury, even if it's serious, knowing that our body will heal and focusing on what is in our power to help the situation. Getting moving as fast as possible, that as soon as it's safe to do so, not waiting for 100% pain-free before you engage in any rehabilitation. If our nerves are driving our pain, we give them movement, space, blood, and information. We want to open up the brain's pharmacy with exercise, knowledge, sleep, breathing, and especially, foremost, making sure we feel safe. And let's have the courage to dig deeper into why our nervous system perceives threat more than it needs to, seeing how our thoughts and our emotions and even our past experiences may have a role to play. This concludes our course. It was my pleasure to present this information, and I hope it was really helpful to you. I look forward to future courses, and I hope you will join me then too.